Hey everyone, this is James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be doing a side-by-side comparison. This is actually not a blind, which has become kind of rare for me. These days I've been blinding these kind of just regularly. But why is it not a blind? Well, it's because the blind would be very, very obvious which teas. So there's really no point in doing that. But I am going to be comparing the 2006 Rustic Zhongcha, sold by Teaswelike, over here on the left. Very distinctive look to the leaves, very distinctive aroma to how it smells, and comparing it with the 2013 Xiaguan Love Forever Paper Tong. So why this comparison in specific? Well, I was sent the Rustic Zhongcha by ISO 231, so thank you very much to her for sending this over. And it's been one that I didn't follow very closely when it was released, and I think it's long been since sold out. But it sounded quite interesting, just as kind of like this old school smoky tea, and that's kind of how it was. But honestly, in my first try with it, I wasn't super impressed with it. To me, at least, it didn't quite have the same sort of density and whatnot that it had. So the way that I think about these different comparisons is you're coming at it from different angles. In this case, I wanted to compare it with something that I know pretty well. So the Love Forever Paper Tong is a tea that I've already finished the cake. I'm well on my way to finishing a second cake of this. So it's one that I have drank quite a bit over the last 6-7 years. As much as really any tea that I have, and I wanted to just see how it would stack up versus something like the Zhongcha. So thank you to ISO for sending this over, and we're going to get into both of these teas in just a moment. So we are moving on to the teas. Going to start with the 2013 Love Forever Paper Tong. It's 2013, but there is aged matcha in this. It really comes with kind of an absurd story about where the matcha comes from, hinting at it being from like Jindai or something. Obviously, the price of this would be much more expensive if the material was anything close to B or C grade from that. But interesting time in Pur where I think in the Western scene, people were very fixated on kind of the different boutiques that were available. At that time, there was a lot of Western boutiques and a little bit less so of the kind of Taiwanese boutiques that did dominate a little bit before and a little bit after as far as the boutique scene goes. But, coming in a factory Pur run that I don't know super well because most of my experience is really in kind of the mid-2000s. Everyone says that the tea gets a bit worse, and perhaps I should kind of test some of those theories out maybe in a year or two as these teas now have a decent amount of age under their belt. But Love Forever Paper Tong, always kind of an unusual tea just because it does use the aged matcha. I think that's pretty undisputed that it does have that. So it really doesn't perform like a 2013 tea. Does it perform like a 2003 tea? Maybe. And the Rustic Zhongcha coming out in 2006. So again, a kind of a very transitory time for Pur, a year before kind of the bubble and stuff burst. But a lot of different stuff going on, a lot of these smaller operations kind of bumping up. I don't know who made this tea. It doesn't seem to have been a big producer, but there's a lot of productions kind of like this where you don't really have super concrete stories. But this one's Malaysian stored. Malaysia storage really is kind of a fun storage. I do like it quite a bit if it's executed well. So yeah, let's get into both of these teas. We can continue to talk about those things. Sturdy, dense, got that cherry sweet vibe to this. Yeah, I mean, the blind is so obvious. You just have big leaves, very much in that kind of barbecue pine smoke vein as far as the rustic goes. Yeah, sweet, very Pur sweetness to this Love Forever, and by that I mean you might find this sweet if you're a Pur drinker, but that does not mean that normal people are going to find it sweet. But I would say it's definitely on the sweeter side of Pur. It has a little bit of that cherry thing that people really like. Cheers. Yeah, it's bigger on a whole. Perhaps even, is it oily or is it just a bigger body? Yeah, it does have kind of this bigness to it, but the thing I did find before that I'm continuing to find is like a lot of like the factory tea, for instance, like this Xiaguan Love Forever, it's like packed with kind of like this dense resinous wood to it, and it's a little bit emptier in this Rustic Zhongcha. I don't know why that would be exactly, but it doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't have that kind of strength of pungency that some of these other teas do have, at least on the initial steep. I don't want to read too much into it, and maybe we should do at least one steep where we push these a little stronger. Not saying it's a bad tea. Certainly not, but just it's interesting because it has a lot of these kind of surface level characteristics that you would associate with super strong ass-kicking tea, like the Double Lions that Teaswelike sold, or things like that. But in my experience, my limited experience with it, it doesn't necessarily present quite the same as those teas. So this next one, I'm going to continue to keep them short, but maybe on this third steep, I will go a little bit longer, making sure to re-boil that water. Aftertaste seems good. Yeah, a little bit of mouth-watering sweetness going on there. The aging on it seems pretty relatively good for Malaysia, not too wet. Yeah, the smoke on it reminds me a little bit of the Dai 7742 from the same year, but those Dais really pack like this nice kind of base of denseness and resin and wood that I tend to really like. Now it's moving somewhere else. What is that? It's some sort of aromatic wood, but it's not a common one that I find in Pur necessarily. Again, Malaysian storage bringing out all kinds of interesting stuff. Brighter, definitely more kind of what I expect. Wood, Love Forever, not a very smoky tea. So we are picking definitely a contrast in styles. What I was mostly interested in testing is the density of this Rustic Zhongcha, how it stacks up versus something like the Love Forever. Cheers. Yeah, very, it kind of has that interesting smoked wood note continuing here. I'd say it's moved a little bit beyond that kind of note that I get from the 7742 of like this sweet barbecue pine smoke. Barbecue's a little drier at this point. Man, it's so interesting. It is definitely, the body is big, but it's almost like, I don't know how big this production was, but it's just not super dense. Okay, let's see how it compares. And I don't know, I'm probably over fixating on that specific note at this point, or maybe I'm just picking it apart, but here. Yeah, there's just like this wood resin, and I don't think people would say that. I mean, in fact, aged matcha is often considered to develop kind of this hollow note to it too. But for me, at least, the Rustic feels a little bit more kind of hollow in that sense. Thicker body, but less density for sure. And the description describes it as a little concentrated. I don't find that to be the case here. Okay, we'll do one last one. Love Forever performing like it always would. Sometimes when you have these more regular daily drinker teas, and then you bring on something really, really good side by side with them, it will just blow your daily drinker and make it taste bad, or like water or something. But not the case here. Love Forever is still tasting very much the same. I don't know that there's a huge caliber difference in between these teas, but I would say that so far the Love Forever is a little bit more to my style. And I think if you wanted something kind of more like this Rustic Zhongcha, I would probably choose like some of the Double Lions or something like that instead. An interesting tea, though, because, yeah, surface level-wise, it seems super strong. But in practicality, I'm not finding that to be quite the case. Practicality is not the right word, but in actuality. Okay, and compare here. Just brewing them a touch longer. The sample I did get was very kind of loosely broken apart for this rustic, so we would expect the extraction to come pretty quickly. And I am also reminded my buddy Hanji did a blind of these as well as I think some other Dai teas, something like the 8582 at some point. So check out his Substack, Wet Leaf, Dry Leaf. Its overall vibe, I will say, is pretty appealing. Cheers. Kind of a wetwood note coming out, that moving a little bit past those brighter cherry notes at this point on the Love Forever. Yeah, it's not the densest tea either, but I do get some like resin and some wood there, and I don't know, yeah. Okay, let's see how this Rustic Zhongcha, which is really what we are trying to learn about here. Cheers. Yeah, it really tastes exactly like it smells. And the appeal of it is very, very straightforward in my opinion. Yeah, it's a nice solid tea, but I don't think it's dramatically better. It's not one that I would necessarily would be excellent for the long term. I think it'd be fine. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think this is like a super standout must buy in a way that I thought it might be, just because of like kind of the overall smell and how it is generally described. But yeah, it just goes to show you that some of these surface level things is like, oh, I just really want like really, really smoky, intensely tea. This tea is very smoky, but in my opinion, it is not like S tier level strong in a way that some of the Double Lions productions are, or some of the non-chows from that period. Those are probably what I would gravitate towards a little more. So yeah, I mean, I would say these are both more like B tier teas, like good daily teas. Certainly if you like this sort of profile. And in that sense, on the plus side, perhaps this is a little bit more approachable than it would be if you had to wait 20 years or something like that for all of the upside to come. Thank you all for tuning on. Let me know how you like this episode, and I will see you all next time. Thanks to ISO as well. Cheers.